Well, hey guys and gals, what are your favorite pandemic reads? I am serious about this. I am doing the best I can to find kind of silver lining in the times that we are living now that COVID 19 has upended life across our world as we know it. And one activity that has been largely untouched that I've seen, or at least for me, is reading a book. And I'm taking advantage of it. Hi, everyone. I'm Andy Asher. I'm editor over here at bloomerboomer.com. Now, when I fully realized how big a deal this pandemic was going to become, well, my next thought after staying safe was, hey, I can read more books. So, thanks to our mutual friend, Beth Grossman, I got hold of today's book and author, Bonny Meyer, with Perfectly Paired, the love affair behind Silver Oak's Cellars. Now, it personally touched me for a lot of reasons, and we can get into that. You too could find yourself totally absorbed by this memoir and love story set in the lush wine country and folksiness of Northern California. I was then back then. We're going to talk to Bonny Meyer in just a moment. Now, if you are new here, this is Boomer TV, that's live streamed on most social media platforms several days a week and available to watch on over here at bloomerboomer.com. Right now, by the way, we're developing new programs that will be available to you as well, and you can learn about upcoming shows in our newsletter, or you can connect with us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, that's for gamers. You might want to see that one, and Bloomer Boomer, where we, as I say, we live stream all our shows. And you can like us on your social media to hear more about what's coming up. And in the meantime, we're going to get started with Bonny Meyer and her book, Perfectly Paired, the love affair behind Silver Oak Cellars. But first, remember, I love marmalade. Well, Bonny Meyer, thanks so much for being here today. And what have you been doing in this new normal over the past couple of months that we're all living now?
Well, the one thing that I've been doing that's different and that I love is I have been putting together jigsaw puzzles. I have a friend who's been lending me her jigsaw puzzle collection, and they're made out of wood. You have no picture of what it's supposed to be, so it's a mystery when it comes out of the box, and has been really fun and amusing for me from time to time. But also, like you, I've been reading more books. I love reading,
Wow.
and so I've had more chance to do that too.
Now that's a challenge, a puzzle that has no picture. That is challenging.
It is. These are made by a company called Stave. And not only do they have no picture, but there's no clear borders. You have it's amorphous. And so they're pretty interesting. But they're also not 1,000 pieces. They're more
Oh,
like 100 or 200
well,
pieces. But it still takes a while to figure
very
it out and
neat,
find the
very neat.
patterns.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
something I had never heard about. Now, Bonnie, I think our time frame actually in the Napa Valley crossed paths a little bit a long time ago. My mom and dad became growers in the valley, and I think around the same time maybe you and Justin were starting out. My memories back then were a lot of older farms growing lower priced grapes, maybe for blending, and aging owners who were ready to get rid of their land, to sell their land. So around the late 70s, does that sound kind of familiar, that time frame?
That sounds exactly right. And in fact, I showed up in the Napa Valley for the first time in 1968 and moved here in 72 when Justin and I were married. And and there were still a lot of, in fact, the property that I live on was a dairy. So there were cows just right outside our door. And so there was dairy land, there were prunes, there were walnuts, there were a lot of things besides grapes. And it was during the 70s and 80s that so much of what's now Napa Valley came to look like it does today, which is almost all grapes.
Yeah, that's a good way to picture it. When did you see that you had the makings to write such a rich and captivating memoir on a time horizon? I mean, when did you realize that your story would be so compelling to everyone?
I actually had been encouraged to write the stories of my love affair with Justin for decades, and what people mostly wanted to know is they wanted to hear about how he was a monk and how I somehow lured him away from the monastery. I wasn't necessarily interested in telling that story, but then one day I realized that I could tell my story in a way that was like a treasure map. When you read my memoir, you'll find yourself uh, really looking at least my secrets of extraordinary relationship, successful, how love really infused our wines. So keys about successful business, navigating grief. We don't often talk about grief well or handle it well in our culture. And grief is something that actually is really coming up for people a lot right now. With COVID, we're grieving over maybe a lost job, or we're grieving over relatives who are sick and we're afraid for them. We're grieving over the freedom to just move about and have friends over that we can no longer do right now. So grief takes many forms and has many reasons. And so I talk about my grief journey and then how resilience, you can see how I summoned up resilience. So
Yeah.
that's why I decided to write it and how I wrote it.
And I had a lot of classifications in my head about the book, and quite honestly, grief wasn't the one that went through my
Mm.
head, but now you mention it, that's so true. And, hopefully I won't need any spoil alerts here, but I'll really try. But this question might help others when they first pick up Perfectly Paired. It all begins with the sudden death of your husband, Justin, near a remote lake in the Sierra foothills. And I thought that I was picking up about a fairy tale, but it quickly changed for me from an author's standpoint. What made you decide to begin the book the way you did? I thought that was very interesting.
There's certain moments in life where everything changes, and that was certainly probably the most significant moment in my life, where one day life was one way, and within a matter of minutes, my world had turned on its head. So yes, I start with Justin's death. He died of a heart attack. It was um, very sudden and unexpected, and so it changed everything. But it led to a very different life. Today I do things that I never would have done or dreamed of doing.
Yeah.
So it's all those losses that we have are opportunities always.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. It's very helpful, I think, to anyone. How do you characterize Perfectly Paired? Is it a love story, a business story, well, a story, a life story, something else? And you also mentioned grief.
Yes, it's all of those things. It really is a love story. So the love story is the glue that holds it together. It's also the origin story of Silver Oak, and I wanted to write about that because I see too many people in business, whether they're running the business or working in it, that are unhappy. And I'm hoping that I portrayed a way of doing business that is very fulfilling and actually fun was a primary value for us that really wove through our day-to-day business life. And then it's also has I say a lot about relationship because I see people longing for deep, intimate relationship. I would say the book is very intimate, and I do see that people even though they've been married for a long time, they're still longing for intimacy that they don't have, and I it's like a treasure map, and you may not find it reading the book, but you just may find the treasures
Yeah,
as you read it.
I think we can all learn a lot about that. Now, I'm in Northern California, and I know that we have a lot of wine lovers here. So I'll take a deeper dive into the wine business here, and I hope you remember this story because it was I was very moved by it. You and Justin made a business decision. You had a label, and its price was just going through the roof, like thousands of dollars for a bottle. And then you made a business decision that might sound surprising. Do you know what I'm referring to? And tell me about the decision, about the surprising choice you made in pricing your wine.
Well, we never had a wine that was $1,000, but we made a wine called Bonny's Vineyard, and that it was probably the number 2 cult wine in California. The first one ever was Martha's Vineyard, and then Bonny's Vineyard came after that, and it was highly sought after. But there was only 4 acres in front of our house was where this wine was made, and at one point we finally decided that people really couldn't get it, and more people were unhappy in not being able to get it than were happy, and so we decided to stop making it. And so that's it is a very unusual thing. We could have raised the price, we could have done all kinds of things, but we just decided to stop making it, and we blended the Bonny's Vineyard into our other Napa Cabernet from Silver Oak. Today, the good news is today my son makes Bonny's Vineyard in the same style as his dad did.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's available again.
And there was also part of it had to do with your business philosophy. I think you didn't want to be pricing your wines, making them unaffordable for others.
That's right. We always wanted to price our wines less than the market would bear, which is a little bit unusual. And part of that had to do with the fun. Justin and I really enjoyed our lives at home, and we did enjoy going out and doing wine tastings in different parts of the country, but we didn't want to be compelled to be doing that all the time. Yeah. And so by pricing our wines in a somewhat reasonable way, we both came from humble backgrounds. We wanted everyone to be able to afford a bottle, at least for a special occasion. And so that's how we did it.
Well, you sort of touched upon that the wine business, is so romantic, but it's also a hard business. And you and Justin went through a lot in building Silver Oak Cellars. Could you speak maybe a moment on what it was like, each year from growing to harvesting and marketing, and also being a family with young children and doing it year after year?
Well, speaking of children, grapes, I feel like each vintage is like a child. And when you have children, you realize, especially when you have more than one, you realize that job as a parent is to bring out the best in that unique child. They're not all the same. They come out, even at birth, different. So let me backtrack a little bit. Great wines are made in the vineyard, not by winemakers. Great wines are made in the vineyard. And so it's pruning them, tending them, taking care of the vineyard. And, there are many times when folks go through the vineyard and they pull leaves or thin the crop or, tuck the shoots or tie the shoots. So there's a lot of vineyard tending that happens. And all those decisions help help the vine produce the best grapes it can in that particular season. And then the winemaker gets those grapes. And again, like a baby, you taste the grapes and you decide what is the best way to treat this wine in the winery. And then we would age them for a total of 5 years. All the Silver Oak wines were like Bonnie's Vineyard today, aged for 5 years. And so all of that takes a lot of dedication and patience, but the result is wonderful. I think of wine as being the nectar of the gods.
Yes, it is. Well, you talked a little bit about people ask you about Justin, so let me be one of those. Tell me what you feel about this. I felt Justin was a person with qualities which appear sometimes to beyond outside control, like a force of nature. I don't know whether you agree, but tell me about Justin's unusual background and how he found his way into the wine business.
Justin grew up in an alcoholic family, in a very poor alcoholic family, but his mother saw to it that he attended a Catholic school in Bakersfield, which is where he was from. And that Catholic school was a Christian Brothers school. Justin admired the brothers that taught him. They recognized leadership qualities in him and encouraged him. And he also loved sports and played a lot of football, baseball, basketball. After high school, he went to college for a year and then decided that he wanted to become a brother. So he came up to Christian Brothers here in the Napa Valley. Their novitiate is the same place where the winery was, as a matter of fact. And after that, after novitiate and degree at St. Mary's, which is in Northern California, he taught in Sacramento, actually, for a couple of 3 years. And after that, the brothers came to him and said, we really need a new leader for Christian Brothers. So they encouraged him, asked him to come to Christian Brothers Winery. And he was actually in training to be the next head of Christian Brothers, which was one of the largest wineries in California at that time, in the nation, one of the largest wineries in the nation. And he was there for 5 years after that. But he recognized a couple things. We had met, actually, just as he was finishing a master's degree at Davis, UC Davis, and I was a freshman. And he realized that he didn't feel fulfilled in the monastic life personally. He also realized that the 40 different varieties of wines and dessert wines and brandies that Christian Brothers made wasn't all that fulfilling either. And what he really wanted to do was just make Cabernet Sauvignon, because he believed it was the best wine, grape and wine, that would be made out of Napa and Sonoma counties. So we got married. We started Silver Oak the same week we were married, and we just made Cabernet. And Silver Oak today, we sold it to our financial partner a number of years ago. But Silver Oak continues only making Cabernet. And it eventually made, because of the success of Silver Oak, most of the Napa Valley now makes nothing but Cabernet Sauvignon.
I remember that time when my folks were planting, and they would do Johannesburg Riesling, and then before that they'd be tearing that out and putting something else in. And
yes.
What was it like for you in writing a very revealing personal memoir? I think I read where you have done other sorts of writing, but Perfectly Paired was so very personal. What was that like?
The only writing I'd ever done before was some business writing and some poetry. When I was writing the memoir, I realized that if I was going to help people find their way to deeper intimacy within their own relationships and with their relationship with themselves, I had to model that. And so, again, the book is as you could attest, I'm sure, Andy, the book is very intimate. And this is going to sound funny, but I wrote it kind of with my eyes closed. I wrote it with the mindset that no one would ever read it.
Yeah.
So that I could be completely open and honest and revealing.
Good for you. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And I know you have a website. Tell us a little bit about that and where people can find Perfectly Paired, the love affair behind Silver Oak Cellars.
My website is bonnymeyer.com, BonnyMeyer.com. You can find the book there. You can find Justin's book, Plain Talk About Fine Wine, too, by the way. And on Amazon, you can find Perfectly Paired on Amazon as well. So,
Very good, very good. Well, finally, let me just say that for anyone who is enamored or just interested about the rich lore and history of the Napa Valley and California wine history, this will top your reading list. It's fascinating, and I really loved it.
oh, thank you, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie, so much. Um, and again, I want to thank Bonnie for joining us today and her book Perfectly Paired: The Love Affair Behind Silver Oak Cellars. And if you like what we are doing, please follow and like us on your favorite social media. And meantime, so long, and remember, I like marmalade.